What's your take on the coronavirus specifically?
Well, we could look at it from a symbolic point of view. Look at the Delta variant. I look at it like this, and it doesn't mean that I am suggesting that there's anything to believe beyond what the symbols are, but this is what I feel. Think about the word delta. In Greek, delta is a triangle. It's the fourth letter of the Greek alphabet. It's also the fourth letter of the Hebrew alphabet. In Hebrew, delta is called daleth. I believe I pronounced that right, daleth. And the symbol, the letter, is the number 7, essentially. A little bit different, but it looks like the number 7. So take that number 7 for a second and you think about that. The numerical value in Greek is 4, because it's the fourth letter of the alphabet. 4 is a very sacred number in regards to the 4 corners of the earth, 4 horses of the apocalypse, and everything in between. And in mysticism, if you take the number 4, the 4 corners of the world, and you add the 3 elements of man, those 3 elements of man are the mind, body, soul, it's the Trinity in nature, etc., you get the number 7. So 4 and 3 within nature, mystically speaking, gives you the divine and the sacred number 7, the number of God, the number of perfection, the number of uniting or reuniting after death with source. So if you look at that number 4 numerically, which is the delta in Greek, and you add the 3 sides of that triangle, it is a triangle. It's the 3 sides of the triangle plus the numerical value gives you the number 7. So I think about that just from a symbolic point of view and how that, without any intention, doesn't have to be an intention behind it, but how that Delta variant label, how that can affect the subconscious and how that can affect the way that people perceive that consciously. Because symbols affect us in a subconscious way, and it doesn't even have to be something that's intentionally done. People might choose the color red or the color yellow for, a restaurant that they open, not even knowing that the colors red and yellow in psychological studies induce a state of hunger. So if you think about it for a second, just keeping that in mind, the number 4 and the number 3 from the numerical value and the actual symbol of the triangle gives you the number 7. So you kind of follow that through and you find a lot of other interesting things. People have made comments on both sides of vaccines, believing that vaccines are totally safe and effective. That is 100% not true in any way, shape, or form. There are literally dozens of studies from the New England Journal of Medicine to microbiology and infectious diseases that show that the opposite is true. However, the other people who say there's a microchip in the vaccine and the vaccine's meant to do this, 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 and this, well, that's not necessarily true either. And you have people on both sides of that argument that are consumed by fear and consumed by hysteria and don't necessarily look into the details of what it is that they believe. I'm not saying everybody. I'm just saying that there seems to be a collective psychic contagion that looks at a vaccine, for example, for COVID-19 in the same way as we look at anything else, with a very extreme biased point of view that, unfortunately, like you had said, becomes political. However, if you look at that New England Journal of Medicine report, they studied 827 women, and they gave these women the vaccine between the first and third trimester of their pregnancy. And they found in the result of the study, and you have to look at I think it's table number 4 in the study, and you look under it and you find that of the women they gave the vaccine before the third trimester, 80+% of them had spontaneous abortions. Now, the authors were very careful to not conclude that in the study. They just left the data in the study and totally ignored it. So when they say that there's no effect from the vaccine on fertility, maybe there are other circumstances that led to that. But the fact is, it's in the official New England Journal of Medicine study that there were this many spontaneous abortions. That's not an accident.
Hello?
That's not something that's a statistical error. That's an incredible number of abortions. So you think of what people who might be called conspiracy theorists say about sterilization and eugenics and things like that, and you look at the so-called predictive programming of TV shows like Utopia, where in the show you have this elite group of people who have conspired. I don't know if you guys saw this, but this TV show from 2013, it was redone recently by Amazon, and they pulled it after the pandemic began last year, where a group of people conspire to sterilize the population by creating a fake pandemic to coerce people into demanding that they get a vaccine, that won't actually kill them, but it will sterilize them. And there'll be multiple generations of humans that won't be born as a result. So it's based on eugenics and depopulation. So let's go back to Delta for a moment. If you look in Norse mythology, and these are just little bits and pieces from a symbology book you can pick up. In Norse myth, maybe you guys have seen the Valknut symbol before. It's 3 interlocking triangles. Those 3 triangles represent rebirth, reincarnation, and fertility. You take one triangle away from the Valknut, you get fertility. So that's kind of interesting. You have the number 7, the number 4, the number 3 in terms of the numerology and the mysticism of that symbol, Delta. And then you go to the other end of the spectrum, you look into other mythologies, and you're going to find relationship to fertility. In fact, in regards to the Great Reset, the cyber polygon exercise that the World Economic Forum just ran, polygon, if you look up the origin of the word, also means to neuter and to make infertile. That's the origin of the word. So you start seeing that beyond the so-called conspiracies on both sides of the argument and the hysteria on both sides of the argument, there's a little bit of relevancy to those things. And you go further and you start to realize after a while, it's not really a coincidence. There has to be something more here. Now, I'm not telling you or suggesting to you, nor do I have a belief of what it is. I'm just simply reading the pattern and I'm seeing the details. If you want to go a little bit further into that, you can look at the number 7, and this is where I think it all comes together. Look at that number 7. Look at Revelations. The number 7 in Revelations, it basically heralds in the apocalypse. And what does it do in the apocalypse? The 7 years, that's the number of years of the reign of the Antichrist. And the Antichrist will be crowned king. Corona means crown, the crowning of the Antichrist. And what is perhaps, maybe you'll disagree, maybe you'll agree, your listeners agree, disagree, but one of the oldest conspiracies that people have talked about for years is basically the TV show Utopia. It's a group of people that want to depopulate the planet using a eugenics ideology to sterilize and to depopulate the planet for their own benefit or for God knows what else. And if you think about it, what's the symbol of that conspiracy? It's supposedly the Illuminati. And what's their symbol? It's a triangle. If you look at computer-generated images of the coronavirus from the CDC, not the actual virus that they said that they can't isolate in their own papers, but if you look at the actual CGI image from a computer, it's covered in triangles. So you start to see that pop up over and over and over again. And it's almost like, in a mystical sense, people are being trolled, or subconsciously people are being trolled. I don't know what it means necessarily, but that's the information. And that's the way that I look at it. That's what I think about it. I don't necessarily buy into all the hysteria, considering when I go and read the medical literature, it's exactly the opposite of what the news says. And it's the opposite of even what the headlines of those medical or science or news reports say. So that's where I take a stand on it.